y'all. Thanks so much for tuning back into It's Chalked Up. And so y'all know that the anchor of my season this year is transitions, right? The life transitions that I've gone through that maybe you can relate to, maybe you can't, but you can glean something from my experiences. So today is a special day. We're going to start at the very beginning. One of the most impactful transitions that I've made in my life was my transition from the way that I was raised, right? So I was raised Seventh-day Adventist. And I know some of y'all are like, I think I know a little bit about that. Some of y'all are like, I don't know what that is, sis. What is it, right? It doesn't matter. We're going to get into it. So I was raised Seventh-day Adventist. And now as the grown woman that I am no longer a Seventh-day Adventist. And I want to tell you all a little bit about my transition and my upbringing. So this episode is going to give you a glimpse into the wins and losses, essentially, of my upbringing and my departure from some of the things that I was very much so a part of for most of my life. So what I want to go to first. Hold on. Y'all know I got to look at my little lesson plan because I get to rambling. So growing up okay, listen, for most of y'all, I know you're hearing religion and you're like, okay, religion. Most of our religion doesn't affect our day-to-day lives, right? We go to church once a week. We pray throughout the week. We say a little grace. We maintain your personal relationship. You try to do good, right? That's pretty standard of how most people approach religion, I feel. However, being raised as a conservative Seventh-day Adventist, my life looked a lot different from a lot of my peers growing up in Atlanta. And even a lot of people are like, you're from Atlanta? Why don't I know you? Yeah, well, I was in a very big but small community, which kind of is the reason why a lot of people who grew up in Atlanta in the same neighborhood as me may not have ever run into me. So let's just get right into it. So what is Seventh-day Adventist? And let me say this, y'all gonna have to go do your own research on the doctrines and theologies and this and that. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a theologian or nothing like that. I'm not here to debate religious topics. That's not what this is. I'm just telling y'all about the way I was raised so y'all can understand a little bit more and maybe relate to it. So a Seventh-day Adventist, how my life was the most different, I would say. Essentially, let me just give you this is a very superficial just explanation as to Adventism and what the differences are, right? Of course, there are many other nuances that, again, you're going to have to go research for yourself, or maybe I'll make another little video that go into it, but this is not that. But essentially, Seventh-day Adventists, and I know they're going to be mad and come in the comments correcting me, and that's fine. But number one, we go to church on Saturday, right? But not only do we go to church on Saturday, from Friday night when the sun sets until Saturday when the sun sets is considered the Holy Sabbath. Right. So from those moments, so when the sun sets on Friday, no matter what time of year, whether it's 6 o'clock or 9 o'clock, that's when the Sabbath begins. And then it ends the next day after you've gone through the whole Saturday when the sun sets on that day. And so when we say it's a holy day, what does that mean? I know y'all are like, okay, what does that mean? So for Seventh-day Adventists in my home, my conservative home, that meant, okay, the TV is coming off. We didn't, I'm old. We didn't have phones and all that. That wasn't a thing. I don't even know how my parents would have handled that. Like, does that mean no social media? I don't know. But for me, it meant, okay, we're turning the TV off. We're not engaging in anything that's going to take your mind off of God or holy things. So for me, as a high schooler or middle schooler, that meant I wasn't going to games on Friday nights. That meant I wasn't, if you had a birthday party on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon, T couldn't come because it was the Sabbath and I wasn't allowed to do that. It meant that you really just kicking it with your family for those times, because at that time, what else you gonna do? It wasn't no phone for me to go scroll on. So it really, I would say, if we're chalking up our wins and losses, yes, there were some losses. There were some childhood moments that maybe I wasn't able to participate in, but I didn't know the difference. I didn't think I was missing on a whole lot. But I will say that what it did, it created a bond with my family, right? We all had certain things that we did. What else we ain't had nothing better to do. Now, I'm not saying we was sitting around from Friday night to Saturday night praying and only singing religious songs like that. That wasn't necessarily what was happening. But I just knew what couldn't happen, if that makes sense. I knew I couldn't participate in certain things. Now, I may have been in my room still playing with my toys, which in my mind now, in retrospect, it's like, okay, well, what's the difference? I might as well just turn the TV on. But I digress. We're not going to get into why I'm gone. We're going to get into what happened when I was there. So that was a little bit of how that goes. So Again, that was the Sabbath. So again, it didn't affect my day to day because it didn't seem like I was missing out on anything because everything around me was Adventist. I went to Adventist school from kindergarten to 8th grade to 9th grade. 12th grade, I was at a Adventist high school. Not only Adventist high school, my junior year, I went to a boarding school in Pennsylvania that was also Adventist. When I graduated high school, I went to an Adventist university, Oakwood University. So like everybody around me, everything in my life was super duper quadruple loople Adventist, right? Everything. So it didn't seem crazy to me because it's like, this is what we got going on. Another big thing about being Adventist that affected me the most, and like I said, y'all go look at the doctrines because I know y'all gonna ask me a lot of those questions. Okay, listen. Is I was raised vegetarian. I've never, and to this day, at this big age, I have never ever had pork. I have never ever had beef. I have never ever had turkey. I've never had any fish or seafood of any kind. I've never tasted it to this day. Now I have had chicken. You know, I'm from Atlanta. I have had chicken, but I didn't have chicken till I was like, the first time I had, look, here we go. The first time that I ever tasted chicken, because people always ask, it was a Wendy's chicken nugget. I can still taste it, actually. I see why y'all like chicken. I do. So my school, I'm going to come back to the chicken. So even my school, like I said, I went to Adventist school the whole time. Even my school in the cafeteria, they served vegetarian food, right? So I never felt like, we doing some wild shit here. Like, what do we? No, because everything around me was right in line. So I didn't have to worry about, are they going to have something for me to eat at school? Or I never had to worry about none of that because that's what they served. So anyway, it was actually after school, one of my best friends. And like I said, the Adventist experience looks different for a lot of people because I went to school with people who did eat meat, who were also Adventists, but they did eat meat and they did eat fish. My house, we did not. So I had a friend, one of my besties, and we were after school one day, and her mom had brought her Wendy's after school. We were staying for practice or whatever. And the smell that was filling that car. They was hot out the grease. It just smelled so good. And I was like, okay, let me just try a little bit. I was scary because I was scared to get sick. I was like, let me just try a little nugget. So she gave me the nugget and I bit it. And y'all know in the movies when it's like, and like, that's how I felt when I tasted that chicken, but I was also scared. So I didn't even finish it because I'm like, if I eat all this, I'm gonna be sick. My parents gonna know I had it. Like, I was just like, you know what? In my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, chicken on the list. It's going down as soon as I turn 18. That was my thought. And it did. But even now, like, so those are some wins and losses, right? Let's stop right there. So because I was raised Adventist and I haven't had all those meats and been exposed, I'm not gonna say I'm the healthiest eater. No, I'm a snacker. I'm going to snack. But when I look at my family as a whole, we don't have certain health problems that come from your diet. Because not to say that we're all the healthiest eaters. And I know a lot of people feel like, if you're vegetarian, what the hell was you eating all this time? How did you get thick? And listen. Vegetarianism, veganism does not mean you healthy. You can still eat a lot of bullshit. And I do. I'm working on that. We working on that. And you can still overeat the vegetarian options, right? So right there. But anyway, so the win, I would say, like I said, is certain health problems we just don't, as a family, I don't see in my family as much because that is how we've been eating for generations. So that is a win that I take from that. And even to this day, I do eat chicken now, right? I'm going to bust some wings down, all flat, 100 mile, right? For sure. But do I give my daughter meat? No, absolutely not. If she gets to a point where she wants some and she asks for some, absolutely. I don't feel the same way. Like, you're not going to eat it. I know the benefits. I know that these things are bad for you and good for you. But there's a lot of other things that I eat and do that are bad for me, right? So I'll let her make that decision. That's how I'm carrying that legacy on. But the good things that I gleaned from it were I'm not as worried about certain things as far as health because of that, the way we lived. My dad, his whole life, he never tasted meat of any kind. My dad never tasted alcohol of any kind. But that didn't stop him from getting cancer and dying, right? So we can't say that that's the end all be all. But up until that point, he had never been sick. He wasn't on any medications. Or anything like that because he never had any of that poison in his body. Now, if you know my daddy, you know he was a snacker and all of that. So, you know, it wasn't like he was lean fit and all of that. But just in general, like I said, it wasn't as many poisons. Okay, what are the other differences of growing up Adventist? So I know that there are a lot of questions about me going to boarding school because typically, especially in the Black community, it's not really heard of, right? It's not something that we really do. If we are doing it, you don't really know nobody doing it, or they sent their kid away because they was bad. That's the first thing people usually say is, oh, you went to boarding school? You must have been bad. Like, what happened? What'd you do? And it was nothing like that. Like I said, I had gone to Adventist schools my whole life. And I know that y'all are here in private school and y'all are judging me. Y'all are thinking I'm somebody that I'm not. But y'all have to understand what church school is, okay? There's private school, and if you're from Atlanta, there's Woodward. There's private school. And there's church school, okay? Those are two different planets, okay? Church school ain't nothing but public school that the church is running. The resources are limited. The education is not the highest quality. Like, church school don't mean nothing but the church is over it, and y'all know y'all can't do certain things here because the church name on it, in my opinion. I'm not to say, no shade, no knock on my school. I got a great education there. But I know that people are not understanding and thinking that, and I want to make sure that we understand where I'm really coming from, right? So I went to boarding school, and I understand, yes, there is an element of privilege here. 1,000%, because my parents did have to pay for me to attend church school, and it was not cheap. They did have to pull their resources and reach out. I understand the privilege that I did have by going to a private school, a church school. But at the same time, I want it to be clear that there are nuances to the Black experience that I want y'all to understand. So if I say private school and church school, I want y'all to understand what that difference is. Okay? All right, boom. So I went to boarding school. It's called Pine Forge Academy. Shout out to Pine Forge, a wonderful school. One of the very few and first all Black boarding schools. Again, it was Adventist. And so I went my junior year. And so I know you're like, well, why did you go? And it was my decision. My parents were like, so the school I was in, let's get some background. The school I was in, legacy. The theme of this episode, more so than anything, is probably going to be legacy, right? So the school that I went to, both my older sisters had gone to and graduated from. My sisters are 11 and 13 years older than me, so had been going, right? I was in school maybe 2 years with my sister that's right above me, and then she was gone. My father taught in that school. That was the first school he taught in after moving to Atlanta. So there's a lot of legacy in the school that I was in. So many of my teachers had taught my sisters. Many of my teachers knew my father, well, all of them, because, again, we're in a small community. So the same people that I was going to school with every day are the same people that I'm also going to church with. So it's even, the community is so tight. There are people who I am closer with, I call aunt and uncle, more so than my actual blood uncles and aunts, because we were just it's such a close-knit community and such a close-knit family that you build within the Adventist community and with many other religious communities as well. But anyway, so the school was just going through a lot of transitions. My family really wasn't happy with things. I was getting in trouble, and not the type of trouble y'all thinking about. It was like, I've always been a very opinionated, I've always been a very articulate person, and I've always been able to express when I don't agree in my opinion, in a respectful way. I'm sure that I've polished it up now, and so I would challenge my teachers, and what I needed was an environment that welcomed challenge, to push me, to mold me, not to silence me, not to shrink me. And I think that my parents were seeing that was what was happening. I was getting in trouble for things like, prime example, I was president of the class. I think this was 7th grade. And at my school, we wore uniform, and not the new uniform that schools like to say it's a uniform, but it really ain't a uniform. Y'all can wear any of these 12 different items. That's not a uniform. I'm talking about, baby, I'm in the plaid skirt, high socks, loafers, blazer, 3 little tie that go like this right here with the button. That was me every day since I put on a jumper in kindergarten, and I never took it off. Right, like that was my schooling. I done digressed and started talking about the uniform. Forgot where I was headed with this. Oh, okay. So boom. So they would let us have like Jeans Day. And what Jeans Day was it's a fundraiser for the 8th grade class and the 12th grade class. You pay $1. It started off as 50 cents, but y'all know inflation. So by the time I got to it, it was like $2. You paid, you got to wear whatever you wanted to wear to school. And then, that was that. So we were in a little student meeting, and I was like, the students, I was leading the meeting because I was president. And the students were like, they have too many rules for what we can and can't wear on da. So they're expressing their grievances. And as a class president, I'm listening to the grievances. I'm trying to frame it in a way where we can go and make some sort of a proposal. Well, the teacher who was in the room, who was supervising, who never said anything, who never helped in any way, but she felt away. And so she told the principal that I was trying to start an uprising. Yeah, y'all heard that right. That I was trying to start an uprising amongst the class. And so then I was put in school suspension, but nobody told me. And nobody told my parents. The next day I came to school and my homeroom teacher was like, Tamisha, you got to sit right there. Okay, cool. I sat right there. So I'm raising my hand trying to participate in class. I'm noticing that ain't nobody calling on me. Ain't nobody paying attention. So I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So then I go to the next class. It's the same type of vibe. So I'm like, okay. So then my other teacher, I'm like, what's going on? Because now y'all making me mad because I want to participate. And she's like, they didn't tell you that you're in school suspension. What? For what? So I'm like, okay, hold that thought. Because what I know is my daddy ain't going for that. So I'm like, okay, cool. Call my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm in school suspension and didn't nobody tell me. Fast forward, my dad comes up there. It's a big thing, but that's not what this story is about. The story is about, that's an example of how we felt like the school just wasn't giving me what I needed in that way. Now, that didn't mean that they was going to send me somewhere outside of the Adventist Church at this time. No, that means let's think about some other options. Or we're going to tough it through here. So my other friends were legacy Pine Forge Academy students. Like their families had been going there. And it's a big deal in the Adventist community to go to Pine Forge. So my really close friends were going. So my dad's like, hey, they're going here, like, you want to go? And my other friends were leaving to go to Mays and go to public schools and things like that. And I knew that wasn't in my future. So I'm like, okay, boom, let's do it. I'm like, I'm 15, 16. I'm about to go live in Philly. Yeah, without my parents, I'm with it. Sign me up, right? I'm from Atlanta. They don't know nothing about Atlanta. I'm finna go there. Yeah, I was all for it. And so pulled up to the middle of Bumblefuck. I'm thinking I'm finna go to Philly. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, you're in Pottstown. Just the name alone tells you. Yeah. Pottstown, Pennsylvania, is where I went to boarding school at Pine Forge. And it was a great experience. I wouldn't take anything from it. Will I send my daughter? No. But I had a great experience. And I wouldn't take anything away from that experience. It prepared me a lot for college. It prepared me. I was always kind of an independent type of person. I was not an only child, but I was in the house by myself because my sisters were so much older. So I was always kind of independent, but I feel like going to boarding school really just like stamped my independence there. Because I mean, a lot of my peers at that time, their families were in Jersey or New York or Philly or DC. They were right there all in the tri-state area. I'm all the way in Atlanta. My parents is not coming up here for every little program, every little thing. And I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to not having my parents right there to celebrate me. So it gave me a sense of independence I don't need that from that. Like I'm cool. I can still make my accomplishments without hearing and getting the trophies from my family and my circle. I was able to go somewhere. And again, I was in this small Adventist community for most of my life where I've known everybody. They've known me my whole life. They were there. My mom was pregnant and this and that. And so although I wasn't leaving the Adventist community, I was leaving my bubble in the Adventist community and going somewhere where I finally had to, okay, just stand on your own, not stand on the legacy of my name or the legacy of my family. Even though they did know something about us, it wasn't as, I was really able to kind of be a little bit more of myself there, I feel like. Which brings me to this point here. So I'm very big on legacy. I think that is something that if I had to like take something away from the lessons that my dad has left me, is legacy is so important. But what happens, especially when you're in such a dominant community, what happens is you get lost in the legacy of it. I went to Oakwood because it was legacy. My grandmother went there. My uncles, aunts, cousins all went there. When I walked in a class, they already could tell me about my family when they saw my last name. It was legacy there. And so for me, it was never a question of, are you going to Oakwood or are you going to go to Spelman? Are you going to go to Howard? It was going to always be a HBCU, period. Don't get me twisted. And HBCU is and Oakwood is a HBCU. But I was like, no questions asked. I'm going to Oakwood. Like I'm a Jessup. That's where we go. But now in retrospect and looking back at that experience and looking back what college means to me now, would I have still chosen that same path had it not been for tradition, had it not been for legacy? No. I'm going to be transparent about that and say absolutely not, because it did not serve me. And what we have to do, and what I'm still doing and working through, is it's great to honor tradition and legacy. I love that. And to establish some, maybe you don't even have any, to establish some tradition and some legacy. But we cannot let those things dictate who and what we are if they're not serving us, if they're not what's best for us. And sometimes it's really hard to see when you're in it. Like, it was hard for me to see as a senior, even though I'd always been someone who thought about my future and thought things on a big scale. It was hard for me to see that maybe Oakwood is not the best for me, because this is not the path that's going to serve me. Right. And so whatever it is that you may be transitioning through or working through, or whatever chains or traditions that you're trying to break, or cycles that you're trying to break, or even start, like, let's not, and I will say this to my parents, let's still allow the person to be who they are and fulfill whatever dreams they have. Let's not limit what they're doing because of tradition and because of expectation. And if anything, I'm going to take away from my experiences being an Adventist, I love that the moral code that it gave me. I love the sense of community that I love, the value that I have in community. I love the love that I have for people because of the people that were around me. And I would have never had those experiences if not for the Adventist community. And I know that everybody's probably like, well, why aren't you, like, what happened? Then nothing happened. All right? I know there's scandal and all types of things, and that happens with every religion. Like, for me personally, that is not my story. I don't have there's not one experience that said this is not for me anymore. What happened for me was that our values weren't aligning. I felt that the Adventist Church, and this is not a podcast or an episode to bash the Adventist Church. I'm just telling y'all my experience because I know they're coming in the comments. But the Adventist Church was prioritizing things that were not a priority to me. The Adventist Church prioritized things that I felt went against the love I feel that they're trying to tell me God has for me. Prime example, my sister, and this is traditional in a Black church, period. My sister had a baby out of wedlock at, I don't know, maybe she was 19, 20, right? And could not attend church. Could not. Matter of fact, I don't think the family went to church, at least a Sabbath. Just because it was so frowned upon. And I can't get in, this wasn't a realization I had in the moment because I was 9 years old, but I did see how she felt. And I did see how my family felt. I saw the embarrassment, but also the joy at the same time. Like, we were so excited for my nephew, but because we were so deep and entrenched in this doctrine and theology and these rules instead of the people, my mom was just like, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? Like, what is the church gonna think? And that is not how I went. And because I was so into the church, and like, every aspect of my life was so into the church, I felt like I couldn't fully be myself because somebody was not going to agree with it. Somebody was going to be disappointed in a decision that I made that was making me happy. And so by the time I got to college, I was still in the church. And I mean, y'all, my experience at Oakwood was very different. When I say that, I mean, we could not wear jewelry. Oh, that's another aspect of being Adventist that I didn't mention. We don't wear jewelry at all. So, excuse me, my mother never wore a wedding ring. I never saw wedding bands. I never saw my dad get my mom diamonds or jewelry. We don't wear jewelry. Now, again, you probably know an Adventist that wears jewelry. And this is my household. We did not wear jewelry at all. So I did not even get my ears pierced. I did not even get my ears pierced till I was 18. We don't we don't have tattoos and things like that. Okay, well, my sisters both, as soon as they stepped out the porch, got tattoos. So I already knew that was coming. But again, like, y'all have never really seen them. They're not super visible. So it's like, even though I'm still like doing my own thing, in the back of my head, because it's been indoctrinated in me, and some people will use brainwashed. I won't use that. I don't feel like I was brainwashed. But I'm still like, let me be conservative about that. I ain't gonna put a tattoo right there on my neck. Maybe behind the ear. I don't have one there yet, but I'm thinking about it. But those types of things, like, I see elements of the way I was raised appear in my life, even though I've departed a lot from the traditional lifestyle of an Adventist. But okay, I know I rambled and I just went off on a tangent about the jewelry, but what were we talking about? Yes. So yeah, I didn't see my parents growing up wearing a lot of, where I was, y'all. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. So when I got to college, we couldn't wear jewelry. If you wore jewelry, you were fined. Like they would put a fine on your bill. We were required to go to church a certain amount of times a week in order to even have certain privileges. If you didn't have a certain amount of worships, you were fined. So very much so still trying to like imagine that as your college experience. Right? Most people think they're going to go to college and wild out or go to college and no, baby, what y'all said y'all want to do? No, I got to be at worship at. I can't. Literally, that was my college experience. So that was when I lived on campus. When I moved off campus against my parents' wishes, I started to see myself like drift further and further apart from not necessarily the doctrines and things like that, but just all the churching, right? Like I'm churched out, baby. I'm churched out. I was churched out by that point. I'm 21. I have traveled the world at this point. I've gone to Spain. I've lived there for 18 months. I've come back. Y'all, what y'all saying don't even make sense to me no more. Right? Like I was growing too big for the box that Adventism wanted me to stay in. My mind was growing big is what I mean. Like I was exploring so many other ways of life and so many other ways of thinking about things. And at the time, Adventism was not ready for that. They were not ready to be challenged. They were not ready to explain certain things. For example, y'all getting out of the gym. So I wasn't also allowed to go to the movies. And I know it seems like such a list of rules. And as a kid, that is how it feels. It's like there's all these things we can't do. But because all your friends also can't do them, it softens the blow. But yeah, I wasn't allowed to go to the movies. And I never really questioned a lot of these things. It was just like, okay, that's just not what we do. We don't go to the movies. Ain't none of my friends asking me to go because they can't go either. And so then my cousin, again, raised Adventist because the nuances are different. She could go to the movies. It wasn't a big thing for me. I'm going to see the movies when they come out later. It wasn't tripping about it. But one day, I think I was either 12 or 13, and her and my uncle were going to the movies to see Spider-Man. And I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was, preteen angst. But I was like, hey, Dad, can I go to the movies? Like, I would have never asked this because I knew that this wasn't a thing. My parents didn't go. My sisters didn't go. Like, they were going. They were sneaking. They were older. But, like, I don't know what came over me. And I was like, can I go to movies? And my dad would look me in the eyes, and he was like, yeah. And I'm looking like, I know it hadn't been this easy this whole time. And then I was like, really? I was like, well, why couldn't we go? And he looked at me, and he was like, I don't know. It really don't make sense to me either. What? Like, all this time I couldn't go to movies and you ain't even had no real reason, nigga boy. So that was the start of, and I think my dad was in his own transition, right? He was in a space, and we have to, now that I'm a parent, I can see this, but like, he was figuring it out too. He was doing the shit that was like, he was like, these are the rules because these were the rules when I had them, right? I didn't understand it either. And now I'm just doing it because of tradition, because of expectation, because of legacy, and they don't make no sense. And my dad is too logical, and he knows that I'm too logical for that to fly. So he was like, go ahead, go. And baby, you ain't never seen me get, I was the first one in there. I was so excited to go to the movies. You've never seen a big old 12-year-old that excited to be in the movie theater. I wanted the popcorn. I wanted to sit in every seat. Like, I'm in there like, oh my, like, it was so exciting. And the fact that it was no real reason for him. It was just like, because we don't do it. And this is also a thing is sometimes traditions get outdated. Sometimes we got to come update them. Sometimes they don't hit the same. They're not as relevant for the people who are practicing them because they've lost their meaning. They've lost their relevance. And I think that was my biggest issue with the Adventist Church is that there were so many doctrines and there were so many rules and there were so many lifestyle things that were no longer relevant to our lives. Like, there was a thing where you couldn't ride a bike. Like back in the day, Adventists, you couldn't ride a bike. And we're like, that's crazy. And it was because, I don't even remember. I remember our teacher telling us why, but it was like because they were using the bikes for, I don't remember. But my point is that bike riding thing was no longer relevant to us riding bikes. We didn't have the same, I don't remember what it was. I really hate that I can't. But those rules didn't apply anymore. So same thing with the movies. Like, before, once upon a time in the movies, people could smoke cigarettes in there and people could drink alcohol. Now you can again. But like the movies was much more of a place of sin, how it was looked at. because there were very few places that you would go for entertainment and things like that. So I believe that that's where the no movie theater rule came from. But again, I really appreciate the fact that my family was like, okay, that don't make sense. So we don't have to do that no more. So now that I'm a mom and I'm making these types of decisions for my own daughter, like decisions were made for me, I'm so intentional about providing an example and creating room for her to make her own path. My daughter is very, very opinionated, very stubborn, very much so like somebody not like me. I don't know where she got that from, honestly, but I know that I'm gonna have to come at her a certain way. And I'm so excited to be challenged. I didn't feel like I could challenge my parents until that moment. Oh, and then baby, the challenges did not stop. But I want to create a space for her where it's like, this is what we do and this is why we do it. You can make a decision for what you need to do for you. I don't think I was ever given that grace or given that freedom to decide. Anything that I did or wanted to do that was away from the status quo, it's a no. There's no conversation. And we know we grew up in a "cause I said so." These are not "cause I said so" kids we're dealing with no more. Y'all understand that, right? I hope y'all not telling these kids because this is not their no. We have a whole different. They have a whole different thing going on. They need to know a why. They need to know a purpose. They need to know they want to know the intention. They need to understand it before they even make any attempt. And if you don't get them early with the why, and if they feel like it's BS, they're tuning you out. They're doing their own thing. And I don't want that from her. I don't want her to figure it out on her own, right? I want to be able to help and support her and have conversations with her and tell her, hey, you may not like this, but this is why we're doing this. But if I don't have a why, then I got to check what I want her to do. The other thing that I've taken away from this that I'm going to use in my motherhood is one thing I would say I miss is the community that I felt so strongly about the community that I was raised with. The people that I call aunt and uncles and cousins are closer to me than my actual family. And since not being a part of the church in the same way, I feel like I have lost that sense of community. I have lost just that, and that's the only way to describe it, like that family, that tribe, that village. I'm sure it's still there, and it's on me to do what I need to do to bring it together. But now that, it wasn't important to me anymore, right? When I left the church and I didn't care about anything that was going on over there, it came with the people too. Right? Because I felt like, well, they're going to judge what I'm doing. So I ain't even going to talk to them about it. Or they don't care. I'm not coming to the church. They don't care what I've got going on. Right? I felt as if I had the baby at 18 and I couldn't come to church no more. Right? Because I want to wear jewelry. I'm bumping Glorilla because I drink alcohol, because I'm going to cuss. And even now, I still sometimes censor myself. And I'm like, wait, no, I'm grown as hell. Say it. Shit, damn, fuck, bitch. Oh, it sounds that was too loud. That was too much. Edit that out. See, I'm still trying to, and that's okay. Like I'm cool with being slightly conservative. Like that ain't a problem for me. But I do just see elements of all of those things that I was raised following, and nothing was wrong with that. A lot of people are going to say or feel like they were in a cult or look at Adventism as a cult. I don't feel that way about my personal experience. Maybe it was, and I'm just indoctrinated and don't know. Whatever. I'm normal. I'm fine. I'm safe. I'm safe. But I do want to make sure that I do establish a community for Willow. I think that that's one thing religion offers more than anything is a sense of community. And I think that that's important. I feel like I try to do that in my classes in the same way. So I said all that to say, we can talk about me being Adventist, and I'm sure y'all have plenty of questions, and I'll open them. Please leave me your questions and comments in the comments. Like, we can talk about this. We can talk more about this, right? But what I want you to leave this episode with is traditions are amazing. Legacy is amazing, but we have to find a balance. We have to find a balance. Otherwise, we're putting limitations on ourselves because we're trying to follow a tradition or reach an expectation that someone else put on us, and we're not reaching our full fulfillment. And that was my struggle, and that is why I chose to depart in some ways. Now, my family still very much so is very, very Adventist, and I in no way want to disrespect the Adventist Church or them or their beliefs or my family especially. They know where I stand, and they respect and they allow me to be myself. They allow me to have different beliefs than them. They don't even push it on me. Now, I joke and say, oh, my mama think I'm going to hell, but she don't. Cause she like, I pray hard enough. My mama she's She leading the usher board. She's teaching Sabbath school. Yeah, not Sunday school, Sabbath school. She's covered. I'm covered. Okay. And she knows that. My sisters are also both very involved in the church. And when I do go visit them out of respect, I will attend. Like, I'm not like, oh, I don't want nothing to do with it. That's not my experience. I know some people have had some horrible things, or they have felt horribly because of situations. That has not been my story. It's just, it wasn't serving me. It wasn't giving me what I felt the church should give me, which is love, which is someplace where you feel like you belong and you're supported. And that's not where I felt like I belonged and I was supported to be myself, right? I was doing what I needed to do and being who I needed to be to belong. And that's not how you should live your life. Be you. If y'all don't get nothing else from this, be you, and be you in spite of tradition. Be you in spite of the cycle that you're breaking or you want to break. Be you in spite of the legacy, because all of our legacies aren't good ones. All aspects of our traditions aren't wholesome, right? Or aren't serving us. And I shouldn't say wholesome. That wasn't the word I meant to use. But all of the traditions that we're doing, some of them don't make sense. Question it. Ask some questions. Figure it out for yourself and figure out if it aligns with who you are. And don't be afraid to step away from that. They still gonna love you. My family still love me. Even though, but they know, like, yes, if y'all call me on Saturday, I could be at the store. And sorry. So I hope that you all have learned a little bit more about me and my upbringing. Maybe you related to something. Maybe you got some questions answered about Adventism that you didn't even know you had. Whatever the case may be, thank y'all so much. I can't wait to tell y'all more about who I am and why I am the way I am and all of that on the next episode of It's Chalked Up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, save, send to a friend, rewatch it 4 or 5 times. You know all the stuff. Thank y'all.